Beloved souls, today let's uncover a truth that often slips under the radar. Jealousy is a self-inflicted wound, disguised as strength. But what happens when the person wielding that weapon turns it outward, targeting you? Here's the revelation. Their manipulative games weren't your downfall. They were their own undoing. In trying to trigger your insecurity, they shattered their own stability. In fact, studies show that those who deliberately try to incite jealousy often suffer from higher levels of anxiety and depression. Well, why? Because orchestrating someone else's downfall is exhausting work. No peace, no joy, no reward, just the slow collapse of their own inner world. And the irony? They thought they were the stars of some grand production, casting you as the villain. But life rewrote the script. Their attempt at control backfired dramatically, like someone trying to trip you while skating on thin ice themselves. It wasn't you who fell, so buckle up. This isn't just a tale of petty envy. This is a masterclass in karmic justice. Let's take a closer look at how their desperate attempt to outshine you became the spotlight that revealed their deepest insecurities. The ego boomerang. When they chose to play the jealousy game, they believed they held all the strings. They thought they could stir your emotions, dim your light, and feed their ego off your discomfort. But here's the truth they never saw coming. Jealousy is a boomerang. The more forcefully they hurled it to wound you, the faster it came back to expose them. Their illusion of control was short-lived, because in trying to diminish your worth, they only revealed how little they believed in their own. They wanted you to envy their life, their choices, or their shiny new relationships. But to pull that off, they had to feed their egos with constant validation. Oh. And here's the problem with egos that crave validation. They're insatiable black holes. No matter how much attention they seek, it's never enough. It swallows everything in its path, leaving only emptiness behind. In their quest to make you jealous, they became consumed by the need to fabricate scenarios, stage performances, and chase attention, all while convincing themselves they were winning. But deep down, they weren't. They were running on fumes, exhausting themselves in a game they couldn't truly win. And here's the ultimate irony. The longer they kept up the act, the more they drained their energy, leaving themselves vulnerable to the very insecurities they were trying to hide. They thought they had mastered the game, weaving their web of manipulation and crafting scenarios to draw your attention. But the longer they played, the more apparent it became that they weren't building anything meaningful. They were living for the reaction they hoped to provoke in you. They weren't creating a life for themselves. Their every move revolved around you. Each glance over their shoulder to see if you cared only deepened their downfall, because what they saw in your eyes wasn't jealousy or envy. It was indifference. And that indifference, your refusal to give them power over your emotions, became their undoing. The cracks in their carefully constructed image started to show. The confidence they wore like armor began to crumble. The happiness they paraded felt more hollow with each passing day. In their desperate attempt to break you, they unknowingly shattered themselves. Jealousy isn't a game you win, it's a trap you set for others and fall into yourself. They thought they were watching you suffer, but all they accomplished was dragging themselves into an endless spiral of self-destruction. The very ego they tried to feed turned into an insatiable monster, devouring every ounce of their energy, leaving them emptier than before. 2. The curse of the false narrative. To make you jealous, they needed a story, a flashy, exaggerated version of their life that looked picture perfect from the outside. Every move they made was calculated, curated, and meticulously staged. From the people they surrounded themselves with to the overly polished social media posts, everything was designed to grab your attention. But here's the thing about living a lie. It's exhausting, and no matter how perfect the performance, cracks always begin to show. They convinced themselves that the game was about making you feel like you had lost, like you'd been left behind. But the real tragedy wasn't your supposed loss. It was theirs. Every fake smile, every staged moment, every dramatic display of happiness wasn't just an attempt to hurt you. It was an attack on their own authenticity. They poured so much energy into crafting this false narrative that they began to lose sight of what was real. And lies don't simply vanish after being told. They take on a life of their own. The more they built up this fantasy life, the harder it became for them to step back into reality. They became prisoners of their own performance, trapped in an endless cycle of maintaining appearances. The act they worked so hard to keep up wasn't impressing anyone. It was suffocating them. Piece by piece, what they didn't realize is that their attempts to manipulate your emotions only served to magnify their own insecurities. The false narrative they crafted wasn't just a tool to hurt you. It became a mirror, reflecting all the fears, doubts, and shortcomings they were desperate to hide from the world. While they were busy keeping up appearances, you moved on. Their story of superiority and success, the one they designed to make you jealous, turned into a cautionary tale of self-destruction. The saddest part, the story they thought they controlled, was never really about you. It was always about their own downfall. They tried to script a narrative where you played the defeated role, but the plot twisted in ways they never saw coming. 3. The empty applause. They imagined the applause would be thunderous. Every calculated move, every dramatic gesture they made to provoke jealousy, was intended to put them in the spotlight. They craved admiration, attention, and whispers about how much better off they seemed without you. They wanted to be the star of the show, believing the world would stand in awe of their fabricated success. But here's the brutal reality. The audience they were performing for wasn't even paying attention. The people they tried so hard to impress were too preoccupied with their own lives to notice the details. Those public displays of happiness, the over-the-top social media posts, the flaunting, it was all met with fleeting likes, polite nods, or outright indifference. The irony is glaring. The person they wanted to affect the most, you wasn't clapping either. Maybe you saw through their game early on, or maybe you simply stopped caring. Either way, their performance fell flat. The harder they tried to force your attention, the more desperate they appeared. What they hoped would spark envy or jealousy only highlighted their hollow, like someone trying too hard to convince the world they're happy. In the end, they were left standing on a stage, waiting for applause that never came. The validation they so desperately sought was nowhere to be found, because it wasn't grounded in anything real. Their so-called happiness was built on manipulation and pretense, and those foundations always crumble. The silence they heard wasn't just the absence of applause, it was the echo of their own emptiness. It was a harsh reminder that true happiness and validation can't be forced or faked. What they thought was their grand victory was really their quiet defeat, a hollow performance that left them lonelier and more unfulfilled than ever. 4. Emotional cannibalism. Jealousy games thrive on emotional energy. To play them, one has to stir up feelings, create tension, and manipulate reactions. They thought they were feeding off your emotions, your frustration, your jealousy, your attention. But the reality is far darker. They were feeding on their own. Every move they made to provoke you carried a hidden cost. That sly post meant to make you jealous. It came with hours of second-guessing and overthinking. That over-the-top display of happiness, it demanded constant energy to maintain the illusion. Every fleeting moment of satisfaction they felt when they believed they got a reaction from you came at the expense of their own inner peace. The game demanded more than it ever gave back. They became consumed by it, tangled in their own web of manipulation. To keep the cycle going, they had to constantly create drama, perpetuating an endless loop of emotional exhaustion. But with every ounce of attention they managed to gain, they lost something far more valuable: themselves. Their sense of self became so deeply intertwined with their schemes that they could no longer separate who they truly were from the personas they created to manipulate others. Their energy drained, their identity blurred, and their inner peace became the ultimate casualty. Meanwhile, you stayed whole. You didn't let their games consume you because you made a powerful choice. You refused to play. While they burned themselves out, you thrived in your authenticity, untouched by their attempts to manipulate your emotions. In the end, they weren't just victims of their own jealousy, they were victims of their own desperation. Their elaborate schemes didn't break you, they broke themselves. They didn't just lose your respect, they lost the grounded, quiet confidence that comes from living truthfully. Emotional cannibalism is a vicious trap. They set it thinking they would gain power over you, only to find that they were the ones devoured in the process. They sacrificed their peace, their authenticity, and their happiness for a game that was doomed to fail. And as they crumbled under the weight of their own manipulation, you rose stronger, untouched, and free. The power flip. Their entire strategy was built on a dangerous and misguided assumption that you cared enough to be jealous. Every move they made, every scheme they orchestrated, was designed to spark a reaction from you. They wanted you to question your worth, second-guess yourself, and regret what they thought you had lost. But here's the twist they never anticipated. You didn't care, or at least not in the way they imagined. While they were busy constructing elaborate scenarios to get under your skin, they unknowingly handed you something far more valuable than they ever intended: power. The moment their actions became focused on provoking you, they made you the center of their universe. Every social media post, every smug look, every exaggerated story was proof of one thing: they were fixated on you, and you became the unbothered one. The more they tried to stir up jealousy, the clearer their desperation became. Their carefully crafted facade began to crack, and their so-called power crumbled. You stopped playing along, stopped giving them the satisfaction of your attention, and that's when their entire game began to unravel. What they failed to see was that the very act of trying to manipulate your emotions exposed their own vulnerabilities. They needed your jealousy to feel validated, to confirm that they still held some kind of influence over you. But instead of getting the reaction they so desperately craved, they found themselves trapped in an endless cycle of trying to one-up you. And you moved on, calm, detached, unbothered. The power flip was complete. While they spiraled deeper into their insecurities, you stood firm, watching from a place of peace. They had intended to make you feel small, but in their obsession to dominate, they only magnified their own weakness. What was supposed to be a game of control became a glaring reminder of who had truly won, and it wasn't them.
6.
The addiction to chaos manipulating jealousy is like a drug, a quick, fleeting high that offers a false sense of power in the moment, but comes with a devastating crash. In the beginning, it was easy for them to maintain control. A calculated comment here, a suggestive post there, just enough to provoke a reaction, and for a moment it worked. They felt the rush, the thrill, the fleeting sense of superiority. But like all addictions, the initial excitement never lasts. The problem with chaos is that it feeds on itself. Those small, calculated games that once worked stopped being enough. They needed bigger moves, louder drama, and more extreme stunts to get the
same high.
They weren't just manipulating you anymore. They were feeding their own insatiable need for attention and control. And as they spiraled deeper into their addiction to chaos, the lines between their game and their reality began to blur. The chaos they created to provoke jealousy didn't just affect you, it began to consume them entirely. Relationships crumbled under the weight of their schemes, their reputation started to take a hit, as people around them began to notice the cracks in their facade. Even the ones they thought they were impressing began to back away, tired of the constant drama. The chaos they once believed made them feel powerful now left them feeling trapped. What was once a tool for control became a prison of their own making. They were spiraling down a rabbit hole, losing sight of who they were and unable to find a way out. And you stayed above it all. You refused to feed into their chaos. You didn't let their games define your peace or your sense of self. What they thought would break you only served to highlight their own fragility. While they descended further into their addiction to the thrill, you stood up untouched, thriving in your authenticity and groundedness. 7. Reverse alchemy. Reverse alchemy. Turning gold to dust. Trust, care, and genuine connection are treasures as rare and precious as gold. When you offered these to them, you handed over something priceless, something capable of building a foundation for a relationship that could have stood the test of time. You extended loyalty, energy, and kindness, giving them the opportunity to nurture something real and lasting. But instead of cherishing it, they chose to play games. They took the trust and warmth you gave so freely and ran it through the grinder of manipulation and mind games, believing they could come out on top. What they failed to realize is that every petty move, every underhanded attempt to provoke jealousy, was eroding the very foundation they were standing on. In their pursuit of one-upmanship, they chipped away at the trust you once had in them. The connection that could have been meaningful and enduring turned shallow, brittle, and toxic. The warmth of your care, once a steady flame, grew cold. Their games reduced what could have been gold to nothing more than dust. And now, as they sift through the ashes of what could have been, they find themselves wondering why their life feels so empty. They crave the attention, care, and energy you once poured into them, but it's gone. What they don't understand is that trust, once broken, is not something you can simply mend with a snap of your fingers. It's not a resource that replenishes itself after intentional destruction. It's earned and cultivated, not manipulated. The most painful irony for them is that while they're left with regrets, you moved on. Their games didn't break you, they shaped you. You learned from the experience, grew stronger, and thrived in your authenticity. While they're left with empty hands and shattered connections, you're flourishing, standing taller than ever in your truth. They turn gold into dust, and now as they search for something meaningful, all they have are empty hands and echoes of what could have been. 8. The mirror effect, reflecting their own insecurity. Here's the hard truth they never wanted to confront. The games they played, the lies they told, and the drama they created were never really about you. They were about the deep, unspoken insecurities they carried within themselves. The jealousy they tried so hard to provoke wasn't a reflection of your life. It was a mirror exposing everything they felt they lacked. They looked at you and saw something they couldn't reach or hold on to. It wasn't just your success, your happiness, or your peace of mind that unsettled them. It was your confidence, your self-assuredness, the way you existed unapologetically, refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's narrative. You didn't need to play games to feel good about yourself, and that made them uncomfortable. What they truly wanted wasn't what you had. It was the validation and certainty they couldn't find within themselves. In their attempts to provoke jealousy, they didn't expose your vulnerabilities. They revealed their own. Every petty stunt, every calculated move to make you question yourself was rooted in their own inadequacies. They projected their fears and insecurities outward, hoping to reflect back something they could control. But instead, all they saw was the void inside them. Their attempts to make you feel small only magnified the emptiness they couldn't escape. Every time they tried to unsettle you, they were forced to confront their own despair. The more they looked at you, the more they saw a reflection of everything they weren't, everything they wished they could be. By focusing so intensely on trying to get under your skin, they unraveled themselves. Their own sense of self-worth crumbled under the weight of their obsession. What they thought was a game of power turned into a tragic reflection of their insecurities. The irony is that while they were busy trying to provoke you, you remained grounded. You didn't fall into their traps or let their games define you. Instead, their actions became a stark reminder of the strength you carry and the freedom that comes with authenticity. 9. Time. The cruelest judge, time, has a way of revealing truths, and it's merciless when it comes to uncovering what's real and what's not. They may have played their games to manipulate and provoke you, chasing short-term validation and quick wins. But time doesn't care about fleeting thrills. While they've been stuck in their toxic cycle, repeating the same petty tactics, running in circles and chasing validation that never came, you've been on a very different path. Months, maybe even years later, they remain trapped in the same patterns, clinging to their manipulative ways like a lifeline. The game they tried to play wasn't just pointless. It was a race they ran alone and lost to themselves. While they stagnated, clinging to drama and chasing fleeting attention, you moved forward. You didn't allow their games to define you. Time worked in your favor, giving you the space to shed the weight of their manipulations and evolve into someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded. You learned from the experience, leaving behind the chaos they tried to drag you into. And now, standing on the other side, you see it clearly. They've been sinking deeper into the very insecurities and schemes that isolated them in the first place. Their jealousy games and desperate attempts at control weren't victories. They were distractions. But time didn't reward their efforts. Instead, it exposed how empty and futile they truly were. They thought they could pull you down, but all they did was dig a hole they couldn't climb out of, while they wasted precious time trying to control others. You used that same time to transform. You became someone unbothered by their pettiness, someone who has grown far beyond their reach. Time is cruel, yes, but it's also the ultimate judge, and now it's clear who truly thrives and who fell apart. 10. The silent self-destruction. Not all destruction is loud. It doesn't always come with explosive moments or dramatic breakdowns. Sometimes, it's a slow, almost imperceptible erosion, a quiet unraveling of the soul. Every petty move they made, every manipulation, Every calculated attempt to spark jealousy chipped away at their sense of self. They thought they were in control, but with each act of deceit, they were losing something far more valuable: themselves. What they never understood is that manipulation isn't just about controlling others. It's about losing control of who you are. They didn't just sacrifice their integrity. They gave up their authenticity. Every lie they told, every dramatic display they orchestrated, added another layer to the facade they built. And as that facade grew heavier, it became harder to maintain, until they couldn't remember who they were without it. At first the cracks were small, invisible to most. But over time those cracks widened, and the person they once were began to disappear. The confidence they once carried turned to bitterness. The joy they once radiated was replaced with envy. The genuine connections they once cherished were reduced to hollow, manipulative interactions. They became a shell of their former self, consumed by their own games. They lost touch with everything that truly mattered. And the worst part? No one had to do anything to them. They did it to themselves. While they were busy trying to break you down, they were quietly, relentlessly breaking down who they were. The transformation wasn't sudden. It was gradual, insidious, and self-inflicted. They unraveled piece by piece until they no longer recognized the person staring back at them in the mirror. This slow self-destruction wasn't a consequence of your actions. It was the price of their own. Every attempt to manipulate, every scheme to control, led them further from their true self. And in the end, the games they played didn't just fail to harm you, they destroyed the very essence of who they were. While they lost themselves in their own chaos, you stood steady. You refused to engage in their manipulations, choosing instead to focus on your growth and authenticity. Now, as they are left with nothing but the ruins of their actions, you've risen, stronger, untouched by their desperate attempts to control you. Their silent self-destruction serves as a powerful reminder. The cost of manipulation isn't just broken relationships, it's the loss of oneself. The ultimate isolation. Manipulating people's emotions for personal gain comes with a devastating cost: isolation. It's not just about breaking trust, it's about shattering the unspoken bonds that hold relationships together. They believe they could pull your strings, trap you in their web of jealousy, and keep you tethered to their drama. But in doing so, they unknowingly built walls around themselves, cutting off the very connections they craved. Every attempt to create conflict, stir drama, or provoke a reaction pushed people further away. At first, they may have felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction, thinking the attention they received justified their actions. But that attention was superficial, and the cost was far greater than they imagined. What they didn't realize is that manipulation doesn't just harm the victim, it poisons the manipulator. People can sense when someone's actions aren't genuine, and over time those around them began to see through the facade. Friends, family, and even casual acquaintances recognized the manipulation for what it was, and started to pull back. Trust is fragile. Lives takes years to build but only moments to destroy. Once broken, it's nearly impossible to restore. And as trust eroded, so did the bonds that once held their relationships together. They thought they were playing a clever game, but the reality was far harsher. They were digging themselves into a hole of loneliness. No one could truly trust them anymore. No one could genuinely be close to them, because every connection became tainted by their need to control and manipulate. In their attempts to provoke jealousy and dominate emotions, they inadvertently isolated themselves, leaving them alone in a world where no one truly had their back. Meanwhile, you moved forward, untouched by their schemes. Their games didn't break you. They only revealed their own fragility. They were left to face the consequences of their actions. The ultimate isolation. The kind that comes from losing not only the trust of others but also the ability to form real, meaningful connections. 2. A reputation in ruins. Manipulative games may seem clever in the moment, but they always leave a trail that's impossible to erase. At first, their actions might have been subtle, almost imperceptible, but over time the lies, half-truths, and hidden motives began to add up. Those closest to them, friends, family, colleagues, started noticing the cracks in their carefully crafted image. The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried, and when it did, it revealed a pattern of deceit and manipulation that couldn't be ignored. What they failed to understand is that manipulation doesn't just break trust, it shatters reputations. Once someone is exposed as manipulative, it's not just the immediate victim who suffers. Everyone around them starts to question their intentions. People begin to doubt their words, second-guess their motives, and distance themselves to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Their reputation didn't just fade, it crumbled. The more they tried to play the game, the more obvious their true nature became. What was once a carefully maintained image of control and confidence turned into a glaring sign of insecurity and desperation. Even if they wanted to repair the damage, it was too late. Manipulation leaves a stain that's hard to wash away. While people might forgive mistakes, they rarely forget the pain caused by deceit. The lies they told and the drama they created left a lasting impression, one that followed them wherever they went. In their attempts to make you jealous, they didn't just ruin your perception of them, they shattered the trust and respect of everyone around them. And the worst part, they couldn't stop it. The very thing they used to elevate themselves became the reason for their downfall. 13. Karma. The unseen player karma. Karma isn't about revenge or poetic justice. It's about balance. It's the universe's way of righting wrongs and restoring equilibrium. You. Usted didn't tu se stir we reason to. When they chose to play their jealousy games, they tipped the scales against you, believing they could gain the upper hand. They thought they could manipulate your emotions and provoke reactions to elevate themselves. But what they didn't realize is that every action they took was setting the stage for their own downfall. Every lie, every scheme, every manipulative move sent ripples through the universe. What they put out into the world, a mix of deceit, insecurity, and control, came back to them in ways they couldn't anticipate. Broken relationships, shattered trust, and a reputation in ruins were the consequences of their actions. But here's the beauty of karma. It doesn't need to punish, it simply restores balance. While they were busy creating chaos, you remained grounded. You refused to engage in their games, choosing instead to focus on your own journey. And in doing so, you thrived. Their attempts to drag you into their drama didn't affect you because you didn't give them the power to do so. Instead, their actions became a reflection of their own insecurities. While they spiraled into isolation and despair, you rose above, free, unbroken. The truth is simple. When you manipulate others, you only destroy yourself. Their need for control and validation became their undoing, while your commitment to authenticity and growth allowed you to flourish. In the end, their loss wasn't your burden to carry, it was theirs to bear. The dust settled, and the truth became clear. They were never in control. You always were. If you've made it this far, it's because you value truth, growth, and authenticity. And that, beloved soul, is the ultimate power. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this message spoke to your heart, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this encouragement today. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Share your journey with us and how you're preparing for your own powerful return. If you feel led to support our mission, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee. You'll find the link in the description. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us grow and continue sharing uplifting content with the world. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or simply spreading the word, your kindness fuels this ministry and brings hope to hearts that need it. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for eye-opening revelations about the signs that confirm you are one of the chosen. We're honored to walk this spiritual path with you. Thank you for being here until the end. Keep shining your light and step boldly into your destiny. Until next time, stay blessed.